I know the bar has been set pretty high for how fast you can talk now. If you guys got through those two, I think you'll be able to understand the rest of us with ease. We next up have Ronnie Shachar, who is here from the IDC in Israel, where he is a professor of marketing. Before that, he got his PhD in economics, actually, at the Tel Aviv University, started his job there at Tel Aviv University as a professor, moved on to many places, including a very distinguished university in New Haven, Connecticut, where he was professor of marketing at Yale for some years, before inexplicably leaving. We talked a bit about that. No, I'm assured it was all spouse issues that caused him to leave here. Where he went to IDC, eventually landing there and even being the dean for a while. Bless your heart for such a self-sacrifice. Ronnie Shachar also takes the analytic approach, much like our first speaker. So not the psychological approach you heard from Kelly, but we'll go back to a more analytical approach to the study of marketing. He's published many articles in lots of leading marketing and econ journals. I see you look like you want to hook up your laptop.
It's just that, yeah, I'm hoping that someone will.
Okay, that's going to be a fun challenge. You can bring it up now. He has studied voting behavior, brands, advertising, many different areas of marketing using this analytical approach. So we're going to get his laptop hooked up here quickly, I hope. I don't have that much more to say about Ronnie, so I can tell you a few jokes, but instead of that, I think I'm going to pass the mic over to Ron, who can start probably in the absence of PowerPoint. Oh, maybe not. I don't want to take up too much time, so if you're mic'd up, I think we can start.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is a joint work with Jason Roos, as you can see, and Carl Miller from Fuqua. And I will make sure, following Eva, not to argue with what Pete was saying yesterday, even though what I have to say I don't think is related. This is a study about the consumption of news, but in a sense it's a study of consumption of information. And since many marketers are right now involved in creating content, I think that the implications that we're going to have will be relevant for them. Furthermore, toward the end, I will be speaking a little bit about telling stories, which we've heard a little bit more yesterday. I think we are fine. What's happening now?
I'm not sure who has a clicker.
You're not sure who has the clicker, and do we see that right now? Yeah. Yeah, but we don't have the...
It's connected.
It's in there.
Oh, it's in there.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. So news. The way we have consumed news changed dramatically, obviously, over the years, from offline to online. The data across the world says, this is England and the US, that we consume more online than offline. And there is a good reason for that. Online seems to be freer, more available, etc. But there's one thing that people have not spoken about when we speak about online and offline. There's one very important distinguishing feature, which is in online you will find link from one to the other. What do I mean by that? Here's an example from a couple of weeks ago, Washington Post, speaking about the immigration case. And while speaking about the immigration case in the Washington Post, they are saying, hey, there is an interesting article in the New York Times. There is a link there to the interesting article in the New York Times, and there's actually a discussion here. The discussion, by the way, the New York Times article is not exactly about the immigration case. It's more about Chief Justice Roberts and his philosophy in ruling, but it's related. And basically, if you will click on that link, what you will do is you will go to the New York Times. So the Washington Post is sending us to his competitor, the New York Times. Here is an example from England. Nancy? Where is Nancy now? Nancy, exactly what you spoke about. Here's an example from England where the Guardian, from the same day, I just picked up it randomly on the same day, Guardian is telling us a little bit. Remember, what happened here is that we have learned a little bit about what's written over there. There was an excerpt about what's written in the New York Times and a link to the New York Times. Same deal over here when you speak about the Guardian, speaking a little bit about what you can find over there in the Telegraph and sending the audience to the competitor. And the research question that we're going to, this is happening very often. The research question that we're going to ask is the following: what's the effect of links on consumer behavior? Because we've moved from a world in which there were no links. There were no links in the paper, right? There were no links to the competitor in the paper. There are links right now. How is it affecting consumer behavior? And see, I'm using consumer behavior. So what's the effect of links? And we're going to ask who benefits from that. Think about it. I'm linking to my competitor. Am I benefiting from that? Is the competitor benefiting from that? How about consumers? Who is going to benefit from the linking strategy? And we're going to ask that theoretically, and we're going to ask that empirically. Now, a priori, it's not clear. A priori, let me just give you an example. If I'm linking, okay, let's use Shiri still, right? Shiri is like, she stood here, right? So if I'm linking to Shiri's material, will she benefit or not? So I'm going to start by using a very extreme example. You'll understand why it's extreme in a second. Google News. Google News link to everyone in a sense, okay? So here's what we know. Google News paid in the US to AP and AFP in order to send link to them. Why? Because there was an agreement that by exposure to those links in Google News, they are stealing traffic from AP. People will not go and visit then Shiri. But in Spain and Germany, we have seen exactly the opposite. When Google News pulled out for one reason or another, traffic to those sites went down. So what is it? Google News is bringing traffic or stealing traffic? A priori, the court and people did not know. So it's not a trivial question. Furthermore, in terms of research, there has been research about news, obviously, in marketing and in economics, but if you think about how much time we spend reading news, I'm not sure we have had enough research on that. But even the research that we've had was about the following. It was about newspapers, and it was about Google News. Now think about that. Newspapers, only content, no links. They do not links, right, to anyone else. Google News, only links, no original content. But in reality, lots of the stuff that you read is in between. Is creatures that have content and link outside. We have no research about that. So we'll try to figure out in this study what's happening. And the way we do that is via this complex model with lots of Greek letters, structural estimation, forward-looking, uncertainty, etc., and counterfactuals. Okay, the thing is, okay, that I'm not going to describe it, but I do want to say one thing about it, which is the following. Look, we believe that we were able to create a framework that includes all the problems, all the major aspects of this problem. Okay. So some other papers in the past have looked about the effect on the linked side, on the linking side, on consumers. We are able in this framework to do linking, linked, consumers, individual level, forward-looking, and it works. So that's why I'm pretty happy about this model. So let me tell you a little bit about the model. Okay? Let me tell you what I'm not going to... So again, the model has many features. I'm going to focus on one feature. But just to give you a sense of what kind of features there are in the model, here's an example. In the model, we account for the fact that some days have a lot of news, like that was exactly 5 years ago, right? On that day, Osama bin Laden was killed. People read a lot of news. Okay? Some other days, street lights left on all day. If that's the headline, you know, what would you expect inside? But on those days, it's nothing happens. Okay, so our model will account for many things, like the fact that when I wake up in the morning, I don't know whether there's going to be an assassination or not, or the street lights are going to be on or not. Okay, I have no clue. So there is uncertainty about how much news there is out there. So many aspects like that are in the model. I want to focus on one aspect of the model. And the fact is that we have differences in our preferences and our interest. Some of you here are interested in corporate tax rates. Others are not. Now, the thing is that when you wake up in the morning, you do not know whether today, anywhere, in any blog, in any news outlet, there will be any discussion of corporate tax rates. You have no clue. Furthermore, not only that you don't know that, you do not know where would you find that. So obviously you won't find it in Sport Illustrated. Okay. But you know, there are many financial online magazines, many Where will you find that information? So we wake up in the morning, there is uncertainty. We are going to focus in the study in that uncertainty. In the fact that you do not know where you will find news that you specifically, personally, are interested in. And in that context, links is going to be very useful. Because think about what's happening here. When you come to this article in the New York Times, or in the Washington Post, you're interested right now in the immigration case. Suddenly in the middle, they are telling you about the fact that there is an article in the New York Times about the philosophy in ruling of Chief Justice Roberts. Some of the people, when they will see this and then that, will say,
now that's interesting.
Others will say that it's boring. Oops, where is the boring? So in a sense, what's happening is that the links will help us figure out what should we do next in our browsing session. Do we want to go to the New York Times or not? Some people will say, hey, yeah, I'm going to go there because that's interesting to me. Others are interested in the immigration case. They don't care about Chief Justice Roberts' general ruling, and they will not go there. So in that sense, links serve as a traffic policeman, traffic controller. Okay? They are very valuable to consumers. They give us value by directing us to places. What should we do next? So that's the model. Again, in the model, there are many other things. I'm focusing on this. Now I want to go to the solution of the model. So we solved the analytical model, and we have various implications. I want to focus on 3 implications. The first implication is rather simple. So let's think for a second only on 2 sides. There are many more sides in the study that we have, and both theoretically and empirically. But let's think for a second only about 2 sides, A and B. And let's say that I'm doing the following. I'm adding a link from A to B, and I'm saying, what will be the result of adding the link from A to B? So first I'd like to see what will be the result on A. And the result on A is actually pretty simple. If people know that A is more likely to include linking to other sites, what should they do? Consumers should go and visit there more often. Why? Because they know that links are valuable. Links will help them resolve some of the uncertainty. So that's good. And therefore, if they know that A is more likely to link to B, they will go to A. Actually, they will go to A early on in the browsing session because they want to get some information about what to expect out there. So they will get both the information in A and some hint about what's happening in B. So that's easy. Linking to your competitor is a good thing over here. We'll come back to this result later on. The more interesting question is what's happening to B. And in what's happening to B, there are 2 effects. The first effect is rather sophisticated. So here's what's happening with the first effect. You're already at A, and you see a link to B. Should you follow or shouldn't you follow? Well, rational consumers will follow in 50% of the cases, and will not follow in 50% of the cases. Why is that? Because in 50% of the cases, the news will be, it's a good match for you today. And in 50% of the cases, the news will be, it's a bad match for you today. Okay, so 50%, 50%, that makes sense. However, think about that. When we're speaking about news outlets, about blogs and stuff like that, the a priori propensity to consume each one of them, to visit each one of them, is very small. So the 50% of the increase will be quite dramatic. There will be a jump in your consumption. The 50% decrease is going to be pretty small because a priori the tendency to consume or to visit is very small. So on average, we expect that this effect will be positive. I'm going to do something that I usually do not do. I'm going to jump to the data even though I haven't yet described the data, and I want to show you a figure from the data. Okay? So here's what we did with the data. We actually took the entire data set, and we had many blogs and many individuals and many days, and we compared, not in the same nice way that Eva did, but we compared all the cases in which people were exposed to links between A and B and were not. And we calculated what is the effect of that on the probability of visiting. So let me clarify again. People are exposed to a link from A to B. As a result of that, do they go to B? Or don't they go to B? Is it increasing or decreasing their tendency to go and visit B? Exactly as the model suggested, well, 1/3 of the cases are not being affected by that. 1/3 of the cases increase their tendency to consume or to visit B, and 1/3 of the cases decrease their tendency to consume or visit B. Just one note, I haven't mentioned that. In the literature so far up until today, the assumption was if that there is the link from A to B, people will go more often to B. What we find here is against previous literature. Sometimes, actually in 39% of the cases, you will actually not go. But furthermore, what we find is what I told you earlier, the positive effect is much larger. Look at the numbers here compared to the numbers here. The positive effect is much larger. And therefore, on average, it's a positive effect. So if you haven't followed the last few minutes, don't worry. The point is that once you arrive to A, you're more likely, and you see a link to B, you're more likely to go and visit B. Slightly. The thing is, and this is summarized here, exposure to a link is slightly good. But here's one thing that I didn't speak about. I spoke about earlier. The fact that I just added links from A to B is doing another thing. It's making A more appealing. Now, if it's making A more appealing, where will these people come from? Some of them will come from the outside. They haven't thought about going to read news. Right now, they will read news, and you will see that. But some of them will come from B. Okay? So just the fact that we anticipate that there is a link from A to B, some people will pull away early on and go straight to A, and then maybe go to B. So the total effect on B is unclear theoretically, and for that we need data. So I want to move to the data. Here's the data. Forget that. Here's the data. Okay? You know what? Here's the data. So what kind of news do we use? We speak about news. We use celebrity news. Why are we using celebrity news? There are various reasons that we're using celebrity news. I think the main reason is one of our co-authors is probably interested in that. That's my guess. But the thing is, we're using 5 celebrity news, 4th quarter of 2009, and we have tons of data. We know we have a panel data of consumers. We end up with 127, but we start with thousands. And we know what they do. We know when they visited, which site they visited, how long, what was the sequence they visited for the entire period. We also have for entire period content analysis. We know what happened on that page. And we also know which site linked to which other site. There are 5 sites that we focus on. Which site linked to another site and when. Okay, so if you want to see that, here's a table that says who links to whom and what probability. So we have all this information. Using all of this information, we estimate the model. Okay, it's a structural estimation, so we estimate the parameters of the model. And there are many nice results. And again, remember, I told you a few minutes ago, I'm going to focus in the presentation only on one aspect of the model. So I'm not going to tell you all the other results. I'm just going to tell you that the other results make sense. So let me just give you an example of a result that makes sense. I'm not happy with this result. I'm just saying it makes sense. It turns out that in celebrity blogs, female viewers, female audience are interested more in gossip, and guys are interested more in sexy photos. I don't like stereotype, but I wasn't shocked when I've seen that, okay? I'm just pointing out. So I think the results in general make sense for our data. This is the space, men on the left, women on the right. But I want to focus on one aspect of the results, which is who benefits. And the results that we get is that everyone benefits. The linking site benefit, the linked site benefit, and consumers benefit. Remember, a priori, we knew that sites like A benefit. We weren't sure about what's the effect on sites like B, because there was a positive and negative effect. In our data, now how do we do that? How can we figure out who benefits? So professionally, what we're doing is using the structural estimation to do some counterfactual. Let me just explain what we do. Since we estimated the model, we are able to sort of recreate reality under different scenarios. It's as if we are controlling the world, and now we pull something from the world and see what's happening. We plug in something to the world and see what's happening. We have that ability. That's what we call counterfactual analysis. And what we did is we pulled one link. We added it back. We added many links. We added outbound links. We added inbound links. We did it for one site. We did it for all sites. We did it, etc. So we did lots of games. And as a result of all of these kind of counterfactuals, what we get as a result is A benefits, B benefits, but A benefits 7 times more than B. So what does it mean? It means that when I'm sending the traffic to Shiri, she earns, it's actually pretty good for her, but not a lot, but it is pretty good for her. But I benefit a lot by sending traffic to my competitor. The likelihood that people will come to me is pretty high. And in some cases, we find, for instance, that just by adding a link or two, you increase your revenue by 2%. Let me say that again. You send a link to your competitor, you increase, it's almost costless. You send a link to your competitor, you increase your revenue by 2%. Shiri will benefit way less than that. I'm going to come back to this point in my conclusion. Consumers, well, obviously they benefit. And the reason is pretty simple, right? What's happening here is, think about past when we were reading newspapers. And I read a newspaper, I was done with the newspaper. I didn't know what's happening with the other newspapers. Right now, the system with online links and the linking system makes the reading very efficient. There is actually an article over there. I'm moving to The Guardian. I'm moving to The Telegraph. I'm moving to The Wall Street Journal. So the reading is much more efficient with the links. It enables us to go to places that are better for us, and as a result, in the counterfactual, what we find is that the existence of links increase consumption. Consumers are always like that. Whenever you provide them with a more efficient way of consuming stuff, they will increase their consumption. The consumers, in our case, increase consumption. Now, let me take that to some final thought. So think about the sentence I just said. Consumers, I have plenty of that. Okay. Consumers increase their consumption. Now, remember the following. Remember that I started by saying that we see today more and more people consume news online versus through newspapers, right? Now, we know the reasons for that. It's mostly free, it's very available. But the evidence that I'm showing you right now suggests that there is another reason that people have moved to online. It's just a more efficient way of consuming news. I'm not saying it's the most important reason. I'm not saying it's a major reason. All I'm saying is, here's a reason that, to the best of my knowledge, nobody mentioned before. Reading news online is a more efficient way of getting news because of the linking and excerpting system. And that's probably one of the reasons, maybe a minor reason, but one of the reasons why online rocks. And I've prepared this slide tonight, following the presentation that we've had yesterday, and I said I need to have a slide with big letters and no Greek letters at all. Okay, second point I want to make, which is, look, should you link to your competitors? Does it make any sense to link to your competitors? Well, in news media, it makes sense. What we find, theoretically and empirically, is that, you get a lot of money from linking to your competitors. Why is that? What's happening here? What's happening here is that people are a little bit lost. And if you will link to your competitor, what's going to happen is people will know, hey, you are the expert. You are the place I want to start my browsing session. You know stuff. You provide me with information. So just by linking to your competitors, you become the expert. And in online traffic, you really want to be the first one to be visited. It's great to be the first one to be visited in online traffic. That's probably one of the most important things. So I'm suggesting something quite bizarre. Yeah, go ahead. Send traffic to your competitors. Let everyone know that you're sending traffic to your competitors. That's going to benefit you. Now, is it only for news media? Well, marketers are creating a lot of marketing content today. I would find it silly not to include link to your competitors in blogs associated with your company. Yeah, you should link to your competitors. So I would suggest, based on this research, that you will link to your competitors in any kind of marketing content that you create. You will become the expert. I personally think, and that's not supported by the research, that it makes sense to even link to your competitor in the e-commerce part of your activity. And thanks to Sudhir, I realized that this is already being done. When we chatted about that a couple of days ago, Sudhir told me, well, you think you're original, but you're not that original. And he sent me to a Progressive website, and I went there, and here's a screenshot. Progressive website is doing exactly that. They're saying to you, plug in your information, and if there is a better deal somewhere else, we're going to send it to our competitor. So in a sense, I'm not saying everyone should move there. Obviously, this is an empirical question whether you want to move there or not. It's an empirical question whether you want to send link to your competitors or not. I encourage you to think about it in your specific case and consider it. Okay? Final point I want to make. For many years in marketing, we have done a lot of effort to be in the center of the story, to put our brand in the center of the story. I actually preached for that for many years. I think it's still true. But I think what's happening is that it's becoming more and more important to be the one who tells the story. We live in a world which is very chaotic to so many of us. And as a result, there's volatility, there's uncertainty, there's complexity, there's ambiguity. And if what is a story? I'm actually involved in some research about stories which is unrelated to that. What is a story? A story is a way in which we organize the world around us. The world suddenly makes sense within a story. It's some kind of a structure of the world around us. And as a result, in a chaotic world, stories become more valuable. As a result, today, telling the story and not just being at the center of the story makes sense. Thank you very much. Do we have time? You have time? Go ahead. All right.
So, a question for you, just clarification. So, A links to B. What happens if we all start doing it? So, we are all linking to others. Who's the expert then?
Excellent. So first of all, now we need to solve a game in which there will be no differentiation. I think in marketing usually we do find differentiation in which one of them is more about content and the other is more about links. But if that will be the case, everyone will benefit, but not one specific guy will benefit. I'll explain that. If everyone will link to each other, consumers are in a better situation. The consumption is better. So they will come more often to those sites. Everyone will benefit, but not one of them will benefit more than the other. Yes?
Does the Google algorithm drive some of this? So the fact that Google has an algorithm, 220, does that drive some of this? Or?
Not here. Okay. Not here. Because here it's a link, exactly you've seen, it's a link from one to the other. From those celebrities, yes, Pete.
So what about the contractual arrangements, like you mentioned at the outset, that Google has with the news services? Do you think that those contracts make sense?
So I think it makes sense in those cases, and I'll explain why. But again, our study is not about Google News, it's about, but you're right. Here's the thing, whenever there is a small media outlet, Google News help them. Okay? Because a priori the tendency that someone will go there is pretty slim. That's what happened in Spain, that's what happened in Germany, and that's what's happening in Susan Ethy paper, if you will be exposed to that. This is local news. But whenever it's AP, you want people to pay if they get your product. Okay? So it really depends on who you are, what your size, what's the status here.
How about the case that you have more than one links, like so many links are going to be a lot relevant to me and that become annoying to me, right?
Yeah, obviously.
So you break down my flow of reading my news, but you will just give me some kind of relevant stuff you think is relevant, but strategic customer may not think that way.
It's a great question. Links are not just out there. Links are part of the story that you tell. You do not just need to add links. Links are part of the article. Like in the cases I just showed you, over here, the links was an internal part of the story. It's not that you're just saying, hey, these guys are saying that. No, he's saying, this is the philosophy, now let's get back to the case. I'm not just saying include links per se. Include links and integrate it into the story, and as a result, you're obviously right. Don't do too many of them. I agree with that. Yes?
Did you look at, thinking about the implication for brands and now becoming much more content and storytellers. So the sites are much more like news sites and less like traditional selling sites. And there's convention in industry of you always open a new tab. You never forward in the same window so that people come back. And talking yesterday, the attention span of 8 seconds, people get distracted and when they move. Do you look at when they come back to the site, come back to the original A? Because as marketers, you tend to always want to keep them on the site, deliver more content, get to your message, get to your benefit proposition. And this suggests that you might lose them, which is always a fear a brand would have of sending someone away.
This reminds me of the discussion we had later on with the REI guy, which is, so let me start by saying we do not have this behavior. We don't check this in our data, so I cannot tell you from our data. But from the results and from the way I see the data, people spend enough time with you and then they go away. If it's only for that article, they will come back to you because you still provide the most valuable things. We can continue this. Thank you so much. I guess